Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of By the Brook, where I'll be showing you the importance of movement for animals on the farm and highlighting some marvels of migration. Across the world, humans are developing a profound appreciation of movement and realising how keenly we take it for granted. Fundamentally, movement is essential for life on Earth, and this is true for all creatures, from birds and mammals to fish, amphibians and insects. All animals are required to move in order to feed, reproduce and maintain territories. Some animals take this movement to the extreme though, with long-distance seasonal migration. The familiar swallow is a joyful sight and personally signals to me that summer is around the corner. These little birds undertake an extraordinary journey from Africa to come here and breed. They are not the only animals to migrate, however. Many of your garden birds will have travelled long journeys to reach your feeders. Take the common blackbird for example. Many individuals migrate throughout Europe in response to the abundance of food. Perhaps the most phenomenal of all migrations to Britain is that of the red admiral butterfly, a common visitor to gardens all over the country. This beautiful insect flies thousands of kilometres to breed in our favourable, cooler climate. Not all migrations are as long distance, however. They can simply be moving from one habitat to another for a certain amount of time. Last week, Natalie spotted smooth newts in a small pond on the farm, one creature that performs such a migration. So despite their association with garden ponds, adult newts actually spend a relatively short length of time there. For the majority of the year, they live in woodlands and meadows, feeding on a diverse number of invertebrates. They are also usually nocturnal, and they will hibernate over winter in groups, sheltered under logs and amongst tree roots. In spring, they migrate to breeding grounds, or ponds, where the males develop a spiky crest along its back and tail, and their orange and black coloration becomes much more vivid, all to attract a potential mate. This is a great example of what is known as sexual dimorphism, where males and females of the same species look different. Males perform intricate courtship displays, all to attract a female's attention. And if successful, she will lay up to 300 eggs, which have been fertilised by him, and they are individually wrapped in the leaves of aquatic plants. When mating is complete, the adult newts leave the pond and return to their terrestrial homes in woodlands and meadows. The eggs hatch into larvae, which then fend for themselves. Newts and other amphibians rely on lentic waters such as ponds for breeding. However, many other creatures use lotic water systems like rivers, canals and streams for their movements. It's particularly important to highlight the roles these waterways have in aiding the movement and navigation of many animals. The brook dissects through varying terrain, which could prove difficult for many animals to pass through. However, using the banks of the brook itself, many animals' journeys are made much easier. We often see this on the camera traps, with rats, foxes, badgers and mice choosing to traverse the habitat while hugging the edge of the stream, where the terrain is much more consistent and there's far less vegetation to slow them. A few feet back from the water's edge, however, the riparian vegetation, that's the plants grown on the riverbanks, offer great cover for prey animals to shelter in while on their journeys. Waterfowl will use the waterways to travel to feeding grounds in search of ponds full of prey. Flying birds will also use the brook as a recognisable landmark for their navigation. Fish rely on waterways to travel. Our brook eventually joins the River Stour, a river in which trout and eels swim back up to breed in the same shallow streams they were born in. Interestingly, the ponds on the farm exhibit a daily migration known as diurnal vertical migration, which is where tiny creatures move up and down the water column in response to sunlight. This process is really important because not only does it affect the small predators found in our ponds, it is also the process which influences larger predators in the oceans, like whales, squid and sharks. I think that it's totally awesome that this occurs on the farm. All across the farm, different species partake on daily movements to find food, from predatory mammals on the prowl for their next meal, bees leaving their hives to feast on nectar, and birds busily hunting to feed their ever-hungry chicks. Another important daily movement is the patrol of territories, particularly associated with mammals. We often see foxes, badgers and deer doing exactly this on the heat-triggered camera traps we use to monitor the wildlife beside the brook. The key to capturing a variety of species is positioning the cameras in the right place.
Like many animals, humans are extremely habitual. We tend to walk the same routes and tread the same paths every single day. This is normally just down to pure efficiency. For example, walking down here, there's one clear pathway that's been trodden by many people and animals, purely because it's a lot easier than walking through the waist-high grass. Animals are exactly the same, which is great, because when it comes to putting up camera traps, we can see nice, clear, defined trails where we know we're going to see a multitude of species. Other than deer and livestock, we'll rarely see anything in large open spaces, so we tend to put our camera traps in hedge lines or in the woods, where animals have an awful lot more cover to be able to move around. So with both animals and humans being habitual, it's important that we don't put camera traps in places where humans are most likely to be, on paths that we walk frequently, or where our dogs might go. Otherwise it's constantly triggered by us. In the summer things can be a little bit harder to look for, but if you keep your eyes peeled you might see vegetation that's been eaten by deer or maybe rabbits, and as we mentioned before, you can see really clear pathways through grass where the same route's been taken multiple times. Our camera traps use infrared technology to be able to film at night, which is really important when a huge amount of British wildlife is either nocturnal or very active at dawn and dusk. So another couple of key things that you can look out for on your daily walks, the little signs of wildlife, would be disturbed ground. That's one that's really key. So you might see where something's been digging. Things like field voles will make tiny little holes. You might see them along fence lines or even out in long grass in fields. And if you're really quiet at this time of year, you can also sometimes hear them squeaking. Squirrels also leave really clear signs. You might see little piles of empty nutshells, and that's obviously where the squirrels have dug up their nuts that they buried during the winter, and they've been sat eating them through the spring. And these tracks and trails aren't just for us putting up camera traps. These are things that you can look for every day. They're signs of nature that you might have otherwise not noticed. Look for those pathways in the grass and think, was it a human or a dog? Or maybe it was a rabbit or a badger. Look for areas where the ground's slightly softer or a little bit muddy. You might find animal tracks, who knows? You never know when nature's going to present itself to you, so always keep your eyes peeled.
Urban development and intense farming have impacted the ability for animals to move freely across the country, as many require the undergrowth to shelter from predators. The removal of hedges and woodland in the mid-20th century has left vast areas of farmland offering little cover for animals. This is why wildlife corridors and hedgelines are so essential for British wildlife. Waterways also offer an important route for travel, so keeping streams, rivers and canals free of pollutants and waste is paramount for movements between habitats. We've seen how movement is vital for many animals' survival and for the biodiversity of numerous habitats. Picking up litter, planting trees and encouraging wildlife to your garden are just some of the ways in which you can help the movement of animals. Don't forget to join us next Friday for Wild Encounters, and please share some of your nature projects with us. We'd love to see them. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel for updates and contact us via Facebook or by email. So stay safe, stay healthy and enjoy nature.